Hi all. I've opened up the new lesson for this week, the Agricultural Revolutions lesson, and different approach this week. We're going to be looking at an historiographical question, that is a debate within history of how the story gets written. What you'll see is two historians looking at a similar, if not identical, question and trying to explain it in different ways, looking at different sources of evidence and looking at different questions and basic assumptions that seem to differ quite a bit too. So we'll look at how these two men arrived at such different answers to a fundamentally similar question. And that question relates to a matter that we're not directly talking about this week, but it certainly is the background to what we're talking about this week, which is the growth of cities. This is a time period when population rates of increase are much, much greater than they had been in the past. Some of Europe's major cities, particularly London and Paris, grow very rapidly in this time period. And that raises a really simple, basic question. How do they feed these people? These are urban dwellers. They don't produce their own food. So that means that the countryside needs to produce more food. So how does that happen? Well, historians have described an agricultural revolution. That is a revolution in how agriculture took place, that it was able to produce much greater amounts of food. And so historians have tried to explain how that happened. So is it science? Is it technique? Is it greater land? There's all kinds of different possible answers here. So we're going to pursue that a little bit. Really quickly, going back to last week, not really weeks. It's weird in the summer to describe them as weeks. It was just yesterday, just this morning. But a lot of really interesting discussion came out this week. You guys were really digging in nicely. I was really pleased with that. I have to stop saying really. Couple of quick points. Religion continues to be an important topic for us, and we'll see it. We're talking money and power, but we're going to see religion a lot in this course. And it does play an important factor in conditioning how people talk about this subject. I think it's a really interesting dimension of what we would otherwise call economic history. But we're also seeing the complexities of religion. This is the period of the Reformation. This is the period of the creation and flowering, but also radical separation into different sects of Protestant churches. You see, the basic sects that emerge with Luther and Calvin, but after that you see a proliferation of smaller sects as well. So it's really quite complex. Versus the older Catholic, which was, Catholic means universal, Christian church. So now you've got these two big camps, and those have political impacts as well. So exploring that is significant, and will continue to be significant as we go forward in the course. Also, some interesting discussions on democracy and what exactly is democracy. You've got some really simple distinctions being made here, but they express themselves in really complex ways. These are, broadly speaking, not democratic societies. Democratic societies really don't emerge till the 18th and 19th centuries, and even then with tremendous limits built into them. But they have democratic institutions. The British Parliament is a democratic institution, at least technically. It involves elections. It involves selecting people to represent other people in the Parliament, so that's democratic. But as we see, lots of ordinary people are saying there's no real democracy here, and we want to change and reform the system in ways that will bring about a real democracy. In other words, making it a broader-based democracy with giving more people more power. It's going to take quite some time for that really to happen, and we'll be pursuing that throughout the course. But we can again see all kinds of smaller factions as well, where people's interests are quite different, and how to think about that. We have those basic groups of the nobility, the clergy, the ordinary people, the three orders of the soldiers as well, the knights. But just all of the mass of ordinary people and how they fit into this. You also have a growing middle class at this period of time. Not a big one, not like today's society, but you have a growing middle class. And somewhat better educated groups of people. You're starting to see a kind of fragmentation in society. You see it along class lines, you see it along religious lines. We're certainly also seeing it in gender terms. So there's lots of lines being drawn here, and those make understanding basic situations trickier all the time. This week, as I said, in historiographical question, you'll be exploring a simpler question, I think, in the sense that you're just trying to understand the differences and the positions of the two historians, but you'll see that there's different dimensions to that, and you'll see some intersections, I think, as well with what we've been talking about so far. This topic is, I guess, an economic history topic, but it's also, of course, an environmental history topic. It's a topic that allows us to think about how we use nature and how nature and its exploitation has actually enabled us to grow and build the society we live in today. A lot of this course is focused on capitalism, how a growth of capitalism allows the West to expand and to grow and to become powerful. This lesson today is that part of that is predicated on a kind of environmental story, and that's a useful thing for us to keep in mind for other discussions that are coming up. We're going to be looking at some other environmental questions and some other lessons in the future. Things are going really great so far. People are jumping in, people are digging into the ideas, digging into the evidence. I'm really happy to see that. I strongly encourage you to keep at the evidence. Every time you can bring out evidence from the sources that we're working with, you're going to build a stronger case. Very few of you, and I try to comment on a couple of these in the forums, but very few of you are kind of bouncing around generalities. You are seeming to wanting to dig into this topic. That's great to see. I'm having a great time so far. I hope you guys are too. The weather outside today is awful, but we're indoors for a pandemic, so let's make the best of it and enjoy. Take care, and we'll talk soon. Bye-bye.